Good day everyone, so today is going to be what I would call as our SKYWEAVER lesson series. I will be making videos about SKYWEAVER that talks about different mechanics, the different strategies on how you can actually play better in SKYWEAVER, especially if you want to be on the top 250, which I'm not yet there and I don't think I'll ever be. But at least it'll help you play better if you want to do better conquests maybe, or if you want to just be a better player overall. Then hopefully this video helps you out, but definitely it's not going to make you a top tier player. You need some people who are very good at it so you can actually learn from them. But for me, I'm just going to teach you the basics on how to actually play the game properly. For this particular lesson, we're going to focus on attachments and enchantments specific to status effects, because they actually can get a little bit confusing or overwhelming, especially to new players who doesn't really understand how the mechanics works. Especially if you're a Hearthstone player, some of these mechanics really got me confused because they don't, they work very differently from what Hearthstone does. Alright, with that guys, we're going to start with our lesson. So first off, what exactly are these attachments or enchantments? So basically, this is a very unique feature that SKYWEAVER has, and I haven't seen this in any other game yet. But basically the concept is that you have a card within a card. So you see the examples below. For example, Gato, right? I have a Gato card. It's a 0-2 card, but you can see that it has an attachment there, or an enchantment. Now you can see that this enchantment costs 2 mana and it has an additional effect. Basically it's a spell, right? What it does is that it will give your hero additional banner, and it will force our enemy to remove the leftmost card on his hand and put it back in his deck, which is a very useful spell. That is a very good card, even if it's a 0-2 card. So it's something like, would you want to drop this card at 1 mana? It will have banner, it will let you do additional damage to your hero, but the thing is, you might lose this particular attachment. Why? Because it's only 0-2. Basically, the enemy unit or the enemy hero can actually take this out quite easily. So sometimes I would think twice, maybe if I want to drop Gato on turn 1, or do I want to drop Gato at turn 3, so I can also cast this additional spell, so I can maximize the value of the cards. Now there are also other cards that have different types of attachments. Some of them cost less, like Nimbus, or some of them cost even more, like Angelo here. This one is a 5 mana card, but this is a very strong 5 mana card. So if you're going to be dropping Angelo, you might have to think twice, like, do I want to drop Angelo now at 4 mana, or do I want to wait up until 9 mana before I drop this card, right? So there are different strategies or ideas that you need to think of before you actually drop these units or these creatures onto your board. Now also take note that apart from these creatures dying and losing those spells, these creatures can also lose their attachments, right? The enemy doesn't really need to kill these units, they just need to take out your attachments so they can negate the potential value of what your cards have, right? So what do I mean by removing attachments? So there are a lot of spells there that can actually override your attachments by replacing them with different attachments. So that's why it's very important that when you play your cards, you need to understand what these cards does. You need to also understand what potential cards can your enemy have, right? You need to understand, if I'm fighting against Heart, do I need to worry about wither effects? If I play against Ada or Samya, do I need to worry about those banner effects? So these things you need to really consider when you're playing in SKYWEAVER. However, in the attachments, those are the things that you need to be careful of, right? What are the cards that can actually take out attachments? What are the cards that can actually take out your creatures, and so on? So just take note of those, and be careful when you're playing against your opponents. So now, what are these different attachments that can cause status effects? There's quite a few of them. So some of them, as I mentioned, are listed here. You have Chains, you have Silence, you have Lead, Roots, and Daze, and more. So which I'm going to talk about in this video. So first off, we'll talk about Chains and Silence. So because these two can, can get a little bit more confusing. Because for me, I really got confused. I didn't really understand what the differences are. But now I understand better. So here I'm going to explain it to you. So Chains basically disables traits, while Silence disables non-traits. So when we talk about traits, these are Guard, Stealth, Armor, banner, lifesteal, and wither. So it will look something like this. If you're looking at a card of an enemy creature or maybe your creature, these are the traits that you're looking at. We can also look at the different cards that you see up here. Like for Gato, it has Guard and Banner. For Cube Jr., it has Lifesteal and Banner. Nimbus, it has Stealth and Banner. Angelo has Lifesteal. So you have to take note of those. So those are the traits that can be disabled by chain. Now for Silence, it clearly mentions that it's non-trait effects. Basically means that anything under that trait, like let's say Death, Inspire, Sunrise, or Sunset, all of those effects can actually be disabled by Silence. So those are the main differences coming from chains and silence. So if you want to remove armor from a creature, then definitely you will need chains. If you want to remove this death effect from a creature, then definitely you'll need silence. Alright, however, as I've mentioned in my previous slide, both can be negated by overriding spells. Meaning that, for example, if I have a fire rune here, which attaches fury to a target ally or flames to a target enemy unit, then it can override silence or chains. So let's say, for example, I have Spirit of Sleep. It has silence in it, so it means that if this creature dies, then the death effect will not happen. But if your enemy casted a fire rune to this creature, then it can negate that silence effect and replace it with flames. So if this creature dies, then the death effect will happen or take effect. Alright, so you need to be careful when you're dealing with attachments. Alright, so if you're casting spells, you need to take a look at your spell, like does this spell override whatever this attachment this creature has or not, or something like that. Just take note of that. Alright, but at least now you know the main difference between chains and silence, so you will be able to play better with the SKYWEAVER. Alright, so the next one we're going to talk about is Lead against Dust. Lead has been a little bit more confusing to me at times, especially when I was new at the game. I get confused. I thought like lead would actually be like negating damage from the unit. Apparently it's not, right? Lead is just anti-enchantment or anti-attachment card or effect, right? This means that you cannot replace this effect with any other attachments, no matter what it is, and it's permanent to your unit until it dies. All right, now there are two particular cards that you need to be careful of when you're using, especially against lead units. Right, so there's Encapsulate and Demon Pact, and if you read their descriptions, they will dust the target unit, and dust meaning removing from the game. And you have to take note that if you read lead, this enchantment cannot be removed or dusted. The enchanted character cannot be dusted. Alright, so if you cast Encapsulate or Demon Pact to a lead unit, then nothing will happen, and you just threw your two cards away, which are very, very useful cards, by the way. So you need to take note and be careful when using these cards. I personally made a lot of mistakes with these two cards because I can get confused sometimes. Alright, so mistakes happen. However, the good thing about lead is that it can also prevent you from receiving negative effects, like let's say daze, frostbite, and so on. So this will help prevent those, and your unit will be immune to those effects. Alright, so again, lead is very useful, so just take note of that. Next, daze and roots. So what are the differences between daze and roots? Because I also get confused with this. So basically what daze does is that it will sleep your unit. So it means that, for example, if your unit is dazed, so when it comes to your turn, if you dispel daze, so if you remove daze, your unit will still be asleep. Alright, there's nothing you can do. It will not be able to attack until your next turn. For roots, however, it does cost a little bit more, like for 3 mana compared to daze, which is just 1 mana. If you dispel roots, then you will be able to attack immediately. Now, of course, this will only, your unit will only be able to attack if it's not sleeping, right? I mean, if you just drop your unit with roots in it and you remove roots in it, then nothing will happen. The unit still can't attack; it's still asleep. Alright, it will only take effect if your unit was already on the board and the enemy, let's say, casted roots on it, then it's on your turn again, and you remove roots, then your unit will be able to attack. Alright, just take note of that. Alright, so that's the main difference between these two, and for me personally, Daze is a little bit more disastrous effect compared to roots, but definitely they have their uses. So just take note of that, and I hope you understand it better. Next, Barrier and Shield. So the main difference between these two is that Shield is against physical damage and Barrier is against spell damage. That's the basic concept. However, again, as I've mentioned, these can be overridden by spells that can replace attachments. So just take note of that. So if your creature has Shield in it and the enemy wants to attack it, but they can't, right? Because you have Shield, or let's say you have Barrier. There are certain cards that can actually override those. So a very good example here is Unstoppable Chop, because Chop has damage effect and has replace enchantment effect. So basically it will cast silence to your target unit. So for example, if your unit has Shield or Barrier, what Unstoppable Chop will do is that it will replace these two enchantments into silence. So you will lose any of these effects. Now the unit is silenced, then it will deal the 4 damage to your unit, which can be disastrous, or it can just outright kill your unit. So Barrier can't do anything with it, even if I say it dispels spell damage, but because it was overridden or removed, then your unit will still take damage. So Unstoppable Chop is a very strong card. So if your enemy has this one, then you're out of luck. Alright, now also take note that barriers can only block damage spells like Lightning Vial. So if it's do 3 damage, then it will be able to negate that. However, if it's a non-damage spell, I think there's a good example that I have here, like this one, Judgment, it will still hit the unit. Alright, you can still destroy the unit. Alright, any spells that can actually dust it, it will still take effect. So for example, if you have Encapsulate or Demon Pact against a unit with Barrier, they will still be able to take it out. Alright, so Barrier only negates spell damage. Next, we're going to talk about Shroud. So Shroud is a little bit more unique. So what Shroud does is that it will not allow any creature or any play effect that you have that are targetable to target that unit. Alright, that's basically it. Okay, so however, there are non-targetable spells or area effect spells that can actually still kill your unit. So a good example for non-targetable spells would be Lightning Vial and Judgment. So they can take out your unit even if they have Shroud. However, if you have a targetable spell, like you need to really point to that creature so you can damage it with spells, then you can't do that. Alright, that's the only thing. However, you can still do physical damage to the unit if you are able to, so you can still point to that creature. It's just that you cannot point anything else on it. Now, I just highlighted a particular card here called Skykeeper because this card is a very strong card if played properly. So by default, this card will have Shroud in it, and it has an effect. It's called Sunrise and Sunset effects don't trigger. What do we mean by that? Meaning that this particular enchantment, it automatically gets dusted at sunrise, meaning at the start of your turn. Now, since this unit has this particular effect, so your Shroud will never be dusted. It will always be there, unless you have a way to override the Shroud attachment, right? So I faced an enemy once, a Samya. They had a Skykeeper. I couldn't kill the Skykeeper at that point because it was tough. So he was able to drop different units that also had Shroud. And the problem is that I could not drop a card or a creature on board that can help me kill Samya, or I didn't have any cards that actually overrides attachment. So all I could do was just watch and die, because all of these creatures had Shroud in them and I couldn't do anything. Alright, so that only happened once, but it was an awesome effect. So just take note of this card and make sure to take this out, especially if you have Sunrise or Sunset effects on your card. Lastly, I want to talk about Anima, because Anima is a very unique attachment or enchantment. So when you read this, when this enchant is removed or dusted, give the enchanted character +2/+2. Okay, so basically what happens here is that if you try to override this attachment, it will automatically give this +2/+2 effect to a creature. And I made a lot of mistakes playing against this card. Sometimes it can get a bit difficult. Because if you just want to silence a unit, you couldn't, because it's going to give that unit +2/+2. That sometimes really screws up your plans. So I made an example here. So let's say, for example, you have Grunk, right? Grunk by default always have Anima in it, and it's a 2/3 unit. All right. So if you want to try, let's say, okay, I want to kill Grunk, for example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attach flames on it and attack it once. So by next turn, it'll die, right? Because it's only 2/3. But you forget it has attachment of Anima in it, right? So if what Fire Rune does is that it will put flames on his attachment. So it will replace this Anima attachment. So what's going to happen there is that if you cast Fire Rune to Grunk, Grunk will instead become 2/3 to a 4/5. Then it'll have flames in it. So next turn it will take 2 damage, but it's still gonna be a 4/3. So which is gonna be devastating for you because it has more attack now, and you know, it's even more deadlier than before. So you need to be careful when playing against Anima, right? So just take a look at your spell cards, if they have any effects that will replace or dust or remove this Anima effect from that unit. If it doesn't have those, then you can probably kill this unit immediately. Another good example here is Mass Confuse. So Mass Confuse has 2 effects. It will deal 2 damage. It will deal damage to each creature equal to its power and attach daze to the enemy unit. So basically what it means is that it will first do the damage equal to its unit's power. So let's say Grunk has 2 power, so it will take 2 damage, but it will still be alive, right? It's going to be a 2/1 instead of a 2/3. Then it will attach daze to the enemy unit. So it will attach daze here, so replacing your Anima, which in turn makes your Grunk into a 4/3. Alright? So just take note of that play effect so you'll understand how exactly Anima works, and you know, make you avoid those mistakes that can cost you the game. Alright, and that's actually the last item I want to talk about, the attachments and status effects. Hopefully this video actually helps you out in playing the game. I did want to put like video clips on it on how to do that, but maybe for moving forward I'll try to add those in, because I don't have any examples at the moment that are recorded. If you have any suggestions or anything that you want me to discuss about SKYWEAVER, do leave a comment in my video below so I can look at it and try to make a video if I feel like I'm capable enough to discuss it. So alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hope to see you again in my future videos. Stay safe, people.